Glalie is a Pokemon that was released all the way back in Gen 3, that on the surface looks completely horrible in every way. It's an Ice type, the worst defensive type in the game. Its stats are base 80 across the board, nothing special at all, and its ability, Inner Focus, is pretty much completely useless. Glalie doesn't look like it does anything at all. In Generation 3, Glalie is ranked in NU, but amazingly, Gen 3 OU players have discovered a use for Glalie that is actually quite worthwhile. Against all odds, Glalie is a viable choice in an OU singles format. What could Glalie, a Pokemon that seems so bad, possibly offer to a Gen 3 OU team? Let's take a look. But first, some important news. Trusted sources have confirmed that the Pokemon Flamigo has gotten involved with a bad crowd. This could potentially have disastrous consequences. Like this video and subscribe to the channel in order to establish contact with Flamigo and teach him some common sense. Thank you. Spikes are the only entry hazard available in Generation 3, and they are a central part of the metagame. Teams are built around abusing spikes, removing spikes, or ignoring spikes. Some of the best Pokemon in the metagame are as good as they are because of their access to spikes and how well they can find opportunities to create them. There are 3 spikes users ranked in OU in Gen 3, Skarmory, Forretress, and Cloyster, and they all share a common problem: a poor matchup against Zapdos, Salamence, and Gengar. These 3 Pokemon threaten all of the spike setters with their huge special attacking damage output and super effective coverage. Competitive singles players should all be familiar with the concept of hazard setting leads. Getting your hazards on the field as early as possible is very advantageous, and the best way to do that is by leading with your hazard setter. But in Gen 3, without the presence of Focus Sash, all of these OU ranked spike setters have a bit of an uphill battle in the lead slot against the common Zapdos and Salamence leads. An alternative spike setter is Smeargle, who can be a good option as an aggressive lead. Since Smeargle can learn any move in the game, it can use Spore to disrupt the enemy and then make spikes, and follow that up with Explosion to deal some damage on the way out while pivoting to a teammate. This can be a great aggressive opener, but Smeargle also has its issues against Zapdos, Salamence, and Gengar. A Salamence lead will just KO Smeargle with Brick Break. If Zapdos is using Substitute, which is quite common, it can block the incoming Spore and put Smeargle in a terrible position. Smeargle also has no way to hit Gengar, since Gengar is immune to Explosion. Smeargle can at least create spikes against Gengar and take a hit, but it's not an ideal situation. And this is where Glalie comes in. Glalie has access to spikes, explosion, taunt, and stab ice beam, and it just so happens to have enough bulk to match up well against Zapdos, Salamence, and Gengar, successfully creating spikes against them and even threatening them with ice beam. Glalie can act as an aggressive spike setting lead in a similar way to Smeargle, but with superior lead matchups. Glalie can use a Salackberry, an item that raises your speed by 1 stage when you fall below 25% of your health, as well as just enough bulk to live 2 Zapdos Thunderbolts and 1 Salamence Fire Blast or Brick Break. After taking these hits and creating spikes in the process, it will gain speed from the berry and threaten a powerful Stab Ice Beam, which deals significant damage to Zapdos and straight up KOs Salamence. You can choose to make a 3rd spike in this position to put yourself ahead if they try and make a defensive switch, or just sacrifice your Glalie for the spike, which is pretty worthwhile. Against Zapdos, you can also Explode, which KOs them outright and puts you far ahead. What's nice about threatening Explosion here is that you can sometimes bait in a Gengar who will try to pivot in against the Explosion to regain some momentum, but Gengar really does not want to take a Stab Ice Beam. In Gen 3, Gengar often EVs itself to live certain hits from full health, such as Tyranitar Pursuit or a +1 Salamence Hidden Power Flying. Dealing chip damage to a Gengar is very significant, almost like breaking a Focus Sash, allowing you to now take out the Gengar with ease and not worry about a counterattack. Glalie even matches up well against Skarmory leads thanks to Taunt. You prevent them from making spikes and start making your own. You could probably create spikes in the face of whatever they send in too, or just Explode for some free chip damage and a pivot into a threat. Glalie can also run enough speed to outrun Smeargle and taunt them, preventing Spore or Spikes, while still having enough bulk to live the hits from Zapdos and Salamence that it needs to. Glalie doesn't match up too badly against special attacking variants of Tyranitar either. It can live any hit from a mixed Tyranitar apart from the fairly uncommon Rock Slide, and make a Spike or two in the process. The worst lead matchups for Glalie are physical attacking Tyranitar and Metagross sets, which will just one-hit KO you. But even in this worst case scenario, making a Spike and sacrificing yourself to get a strong offensive threat in is not a bad opener for an offensive team in Gen 3. That momentum can often be enough to carry you to victory on its own. Switching out in these lead matchups and saving your Glalie for a more advantageous situation later on can also be a good way to go. Gen 3 OU has been around for more than 15 years, and yet it still sees significant metagame shifts and innovations to this day. While there are tried and true strategies and metagame threats that have been around since the beginning, players will always come up with creative ways to exploit and punish whatever's popular. Glalie, despite how bad it looks on the surface, just so happens to have a perfect combination of traits to find a place for itself in the Gen 3 OU metagame, and I think that's awesome. I'll share a Glalie team of my own in the description of this video if you'd like to give it a go. I've had a decent amount of success with this team on the Gen 3 OU ladder, and I think it's a decent choice for beginners. The team uses Moltres, who can switch in against Pokemon like Metagross or Celebi and threaten most of the metagame with its fire grass coverage. It can even roar an incoming Blissey to rack up some Spikes chip. Jolteon is a fast threat that can outrun and threaten many Pokemon with its electric and ice coverage. It can switch in against Zapdos or Gengar thanks to Volt Absorb, and much like Moltres, it can also force in Blissey and use Roar to force Spike's chip damage. Dragon Dance Tyranitar is used to make sand, which removes leftovers healing from defensive walls. It's also an excellent late game cleaner and win condition. Offensive Swampert is used to help out against enemy Tyranitar while applying offensive pressure at the same time. It can also outrun and threaten Claydol with Hydro Pump, which defends you against Rapid Spin. Bulky Gengar is used to block Rapid Spin from the enemy, pose a threat with its coverage, and explode for momentum. Lead with Glalie, get Spikes up as early as possible, and go all in on offense. If you keep momentum up and play aggressively, this team should serve you well. What do you think of Glalie? Who's your favorite niche Pokemon in an OU format? And what would you like me to talk about next? Let me know down below in the comments. And thank you for watching. Before I go, I have some great news for Jimothy fans everywhere. I will now be live streaming every Friday at 7 PM EST, right here on YouTube. This week we'll be playing some Pokemon Emerald Rogue, so stay tuned for that and subscribe to be notified when I go live. Thank you to the patrons. Become a patron to appear on this funny end screen alongside your favorite Pokemon, and for access to various other rewards such as video requests.
The money got different, cause of what I'm spending. The money got different,
oh, it's
cause of what I'm
Megaphone!
spending.
Whoa,
The money
KO'd
got
by one
different,
hit! It
cause
scattered
of what I'm
Spike!
spending. The money got different, cause of what I'm spending.